Welcome to Triple Threat, the podcast with Jamel President, where it's good news and good vibes all the time, baby.
When we left Portugal to come play with you in your system, Jamel, it was the best thing for Shane because you pushed him to do other things outside his box.
Hey, what's up, guys? Coming up next, we have our Student Athlete Informational. And in this episode, we have compiled a couple of important guests to talk about their points, their point of views, and how it relates to student athletes and what student athletes need to make it to the next level. A couple of those things, I want to thank Marcus Woods coming on. He had a great point about him using grades to execute his plans. BJ McKie talked about the different triggers that's needed. Stacy Harris talked about the mental preparation that's needed for student athletes. And then finally, Melvin Watson talked about facing adversity. How do you deal with adversity in your teammates? So very important things that athletes need to adhere to when they're going in this journey. All right, let's get into the interviews. And this time, our message, we got Marcus Woods. So it came down to when your senior year. Give me a look at the top. How did you end up at CFC?
So early, I had two schools that were recruiting me, Mount St. Mary's and Furman. And Furman came in and said, "Listen, it's this simple." Butch Estes, I remember, he said, "We want you to be the point guard, but like there are other guards we want. And if you don't commit, say in the next 2 or 3 weeks, we're going to have to go on to our second and third option." And at the time, I didn't have any guidance, dude. I didn't have any guidance. I was making these decisions kind of on my own. I knew we had won a state championship. So I kind of say, I'll bet on myself that I could get some better opportunities. And at the time, what better was, I didn't know. I just didn't know very much about Furman. So eventually, University of New Orleans, where they came knocking, Jacksonville University, they came knocking a little bit, and then the College of Charleston came, and it was funny because Dwayne Grace came to recruit me in high school, and he made a comment that he had been asking around, and they needed a point guard with grades, and and I always held my SATs and my grades really, really important to me. That just was who I was. And so that's how I ended up on their radars more than anything because of grades. And they came, and I came down to Charleston on a visit, and Coach Grace took me to a few jazz bars at 17 years old at the time. I'm in the jazz bar, 17 years old. But I just liked it. I liked what they were doing. I liked how hard they played, the game that I went to. And I said I was coming. After about a week later, I said I wanted to go.
So there it goes. You heard about Marcus Woods using grades as a way of getting them over the finish line. You don't have to be the best skilled athlete in the building, but having a high academic IQ can be very crucial for college coaches. And he talked about trusting himself, right? Early on, he said he identified where he was and measured himself where he was skillfully in the game, but then focused mostly on the academic part of the situation. And we talked about early development. He said he really started playing later on in high school, later on in middle school. But what if he had developed early on in 4th and 5th grade? Would it have been the same? Would the situation would have been a little different for him? And the answer is yes and no. But to be better prepared to get your best opportunities, you have to be highly skilled academically and highly skilled athletically. And This is a great example how Marcus Woods used this academic gifts to get him across the finish line.
I always, again, I'm gonna take a little liberty here. I always kind of had myself as a person that the basketball actually, for me at that time, was not that important, right? It really was going and obtaining an education, a college degree. And if basketball was going to be the means, then so be it. So when I looked at the situation, I mean, I did the math. I did the math on, you know, what the point guard, Mike Beckett, was going to be a senior at the time. So I did the math and said, okay, by my junior year, can I be a starter here? That was really the only thing that was really in my mind is, could I go somewhere and start 2 years? I mostly wanted to be a part of a program that, you know, seemed to be about the right things. And the fact that they were moving into Division I, right, just gave me an opportunity to be a part of something early on, to be kind of a pioneer of sort. It just, I thought those type of thoughts. You know, I didn't know how good I was going to be in college. You know, I had no idea. So I was really looking at going to a quality place, obtaining a quality education. So when school was over, right, I gave myself the best chance to be successful.
So yeah, in this approach, I think Marcus Woods took the oatmeal recipe approach. As you heard in the interview, he talked about him measuring the classification on the school he was going to. He figured that if he was coming to be a freshman and Mike Beckett was going to be a senior or a junior, all right, that gives him a little opportunity to play 2 years as a starter. Those things are crucial when you're making a college decision. So I think Mark Woods had a good strategic approach on getting over the finish line, because he also understood about playing time when it relates to student athletes coming in. You can easily be over recruited, especially if a coach brings in 2 point guards, the same classification. It's tough to break that lineup when you're butting head every year to year. So what Mark did was he made a crucial decision on grades and his opportunities to be able to play later on in his career. I think it was a good opportunity, a good approach to take. And again, it sounded like the oatmeal recipe approach, which we designed to help athletes get to the next level. You have to weigh those options, and not just about the school. It's also about the options that's going to open up for you later on in your career. And this time our message, we got BJ McKie.
You got to know your value. You can't just like the school and want to go there. So you got to, what I'm saying is, like, the travel ball, the travel scene, people just think I just play AAU, I just play travel ball, and it's going to happen for me. When you're averaging 2.5 points a game, like, nobody's going to watch that. So
Right.
Talk about that summer season what was your regimen in the summer season? What did you do, in between seasons?
I worked out every day, sometimes twice a day, stayed in the gym. It wasn't much going on like it is today.
Right.
We didn't have Twitter and IG and all that type stuff. Our parents pretty much was like, hey, go outside. Don't come back inside till the light come on.
Right.
And I stayed in the gym, stayed hungry, ran, had my strength shoes, was in the strength shoes, had my regimen with that.
Everybody has
it's all about putting that work in, man. Getting in the lab and really working on your craft. I knew I had to get better.
It's all about putting that work in, BJ. But what I'm trying to get out to you is that, again, what sparked that? Because your dad's, I don't know your background, but kids that don't want for anything, I'm not saying that was you, but kids that's really, really hungry
Yeah.
got a single home, living in the projects.
Mhm.
Like, that's a trigger, right?
Yeah.
If you're not in that environment, like, what's the trigger? You know what I'm saying? That's something different. And that's what I'm trying to get kids to understand.
My trigger was I wanted to be the best. I wanted to be the best in the state. At that time when I was coming up, I think I was ranked like 9th or 10th.
Right.
You know, I wanted to be one of the best in the country.
Right.
You know, that triggered me. I wanted to make my parents proud. I wanted to make my family proud.
That's what I wanted to get out of, because kids don't understand. Like, you gotta put something in front of you. You're doing it for yourself. You can cop out at any given time. That's what I wanted to get out.
You do stuff for yourself, but you're gonna have something to give you that trigger. That was my trigger. I wanted my family to be proud.
Yes.
Of my accomplishments and what I was trying to do.
Yeah.
So that triggered me. Hey, I was willing to go out and die on that floor
for sure
to prove everybody that I was the best.
For sure.
Hard work pays off. We talk a lot about hard work, right? It's a whole different mentality to separate yourself and understand what hard work really is about. There also are triggers. You know what I mean? There are also things that help you get to the next level, help you wake up in the morning and where you don't feel like moving. And then next thing you know, you're in the gym working out, going hard. All right. Those things are a byproduct of having the trigger. And my parents was my trigger, right? I love to look up in the stands, see my mom in the stands. So I want to show off for her. So I was trying to really squeeze it out of BJ to talk about that, because those things it's not really talked about. Hard work is such a common terminology. So such a easy thing to say and expect someone to do. But when you have triggers, it makes it a whole lot easier. And one of his triggers and goals. So one of his goals was to be the best in the state, best in the country. And with that, he wanted to also make his parents proud. That's a trigger you got to have. Also, having something to prove, personal goals, and that support system is so important. Having a support system, having a family to hug you when things are going bad, to hug you when things are going good. Those things are very important. But I want to stress the different mentality you have to make things happen. Like you said, every day he was in the gym. And granted, in our days coming up, we didn't have Instagram and social media to be kind of a distraction. So it was a whole lot easier, per se, to get the work in. So now it's more difficult times to get to work in. Your friends going out, partying, hanging out. You got to put that carrot in front of you. You got to put that trigger, put something else in front of you to make you work. And there's a reason why I named the DAE Foundation Dolores and Estelle, because when I get up every day, that's what I'm doing it for. I'm doing it for them.
So you started killing, and then your senior year, who was looking at you, and take us to the recruiting wars. Why USC? Because I'm pretty sure you could go anywhere in the country.
Everybody in the country was on me. Starting in my junior year. After my sophomore year, I went to 5-star, which was the top dog back in the day.
Right.
After my sophomore year, going into my junior year.
And you went there your sophomore year?
Yeah, I went there my sophomore year and my junior year.
Wow.
And you had Nike All-American camp going into my junior year. And I won't ever forget Howard Garfinkel announced me as one of the best players in the country.
Wow.
And when I was at that Nike All-American game, Nike All-American camp, I saw that hoop scoop that came out, and I was top 20 in the country.
Wow.
Joining into my junior year.
Going to your junior
year. And now you got a target on your back.
For sure.
It's easy to get there. It's easier to get there. It's harder to keep it.
For sure.
You finished it. Sure. And that's the same thing my mom and dad told me was, hey, you think you work now. Now you got a target on your back.
Right.
Now you gotta go from here to here and step your game up.
Right.
And that's what I realized. No matter whether I was out on the, I was at Seven Oaks or Friars Gate or St. Andrews Park or wherever, Martin Luther King Park, whatever. Everybody knew the ranking, what you was all about, and everybody was out to prove themselves to supposedly one of the best players in the country. So you had to come fully ready each and every time you stepped out on the floor.
And that's what Marvin said. Marvin said, listen, I was one of the best in the state proving, and he was coming at me. He wasn't scared. You know what I'm saying? And he was coming at me like he had something to prove. That's what it takes. But why USC?
Why USC? I went down, my final five was Virginia, Florida, Tennessee, Clemson, and South Carolina. And Clemson had been recruiting me for a while. Rick Barnes was there, who's definitely one of the best up-and-coming coaches. You know, I think he came from Providence and was at Clemson. I knew he was going to do some good things.
Terrell McIntyre was there. Terrell McIntyre
T-Mac. Yeah. T-Mac thanks me to this day because, you know, we're boys. He thanks me to this day because he like, man, if you had went to Clemson, I would have had to go somewhere else. And that was his only high major offer.
Listen, I was at Folk Union, and when they signed Terrell, that's why I backed out of Clemson.
Yeah.
Because I was going there, but I was like, I'm not going there if they already signed a guard. But go ahead.
Yeah. And I just thought with the guys that we had coming in, I knew some of those guys who I played AAU with. You know, I was comfortable with the coaching staff that was there at the time that was recruiting me. I knew they had some good things happening. They already had some pieces with your boy Mel there. They had Larry sitting out after transferring from North Carolina, had Nate Wilburn coming in from Ohio State. So they had transfers, and we already had a top 5 recruiting class. So, and you got to remember, I had Justin that was about to be born during that same time. And we talked before, I'm a big family guy.
Right.
I said, why leave? Why leave? Everybody was saying, why you going down there? They're losing. Sometimes you got to bet on yourself, man.
For sure.
Sometimes you got to bet, not to say that all the accomplishments and achievements we had was because of me.
Right.
But I'm saying sometimes you got to bet on yourself as far as saying like, hey, all of us collectively can take this thing. All the South Carolina kids can take this thing and take it up to another level.
Right.
And that's what we did. And I've always been appreciative of South Carolina and Coach Fogler and all of them for even having me down there, because that was one of the best decisions that I ever made.
So can you players imagine having one of the top scout in the country say you're one of the best player in the country, one of the top scouts in the world, say you're one of the best players in the country? That's huge. Such a great confidence booster. But it didn't come from just hanging out. It came from hard work, right? It came from those triggers. It came from setting those goals and completing them. But the thing is, like you said, it's easy to get there, but it's harder to keep it, right? The harder you work, the more harder you got to work to keep it. And once he created that avenue for himself, he had an X on his back. Everybody was gunning for him. I know when I'm playing, and I know someone that was ranked higher than me, that's who I want to guard, because I want to be in his midst. If every school is looking at him, right, I want to go at his neck so I can get some of those looks. And when you got that type of pressure on you, it's hard to keep going, right? But you develop a lather of a working mentality that it won't bother you, right? It's because you're used to that. He also talked about, trusting in himself, right? Same thing Marcus Woods talked about. And he had a kid coming up. He had to make a sacrifice, putting your family, putting your obligations, your responsibilities before your wants and needs is huge. It's nothing but character, right? And those skills carry on to real life applications. So getting from BJ, what we're talking about is hard work, triggers, setting goals, having a support system, all right, and making sacrifices. Those things help you make it to the next level and be successful. The most important message to get across to student athletes suffering from mental health issues is that you're not alone. Many student athletes deal with depression, anxiety, eating disorders, and other mental health struggles. If this is the case, speak to someone like a counselor, a parent, a trusted adult, or your fellow teammate. Adults who are supporting a student athlete should be aware of the signs. A student athlete who is experiencing mental health difficulties might have constant fatigue, loss of appetite, mood swings, apathy, or even declining grades and/or social isolation. A student athlete's mental health can be severely affected by an injury. An athlete's entire life becomes about their sport. And when they lose the ability to play, it can take a huge toll mentally. As we continue to reduce the stigma around mental health, hopefully more middle and high school level student athletes will feel confident discussing their health, whether it be mental or physical. The Triple Threat podcast will be adding a psychology aspect in season 2. We will be doing our part to help destigmatize mental health when it comes to student athletes. So subscribe on your favorite podcast listening platform so you never miss an episode. And this time our message, we got Stacy Harris. So picture this, and I'm gonna take you back to, just the system, man, and, being a senior in that system, being a freshman, being a junior in that system. This guy got people coming in, like he's got a JV team already on staff practicing. Like it's always gonna be, you gotta always be ready. Talk about your freshman year coming in, because you had was Mike Beckett and all those guys was there. Don was those who all was there?
Mike Beckett just had left, and it was Marion, it was Marcus Woods, Pat King, Ken Ward. I mean, man, you could imagine. I was about 6'3", 6'4", 175 going into college. And when I saw these dudes, I was like, whoa, okay. I mean, I know I can play, but, it was certainly an eye-opening experience because, I was a good athlete, but the physicality of the game, I was not prepared for.
And the mental aspect of it, like what Coach Chris required from you as an athlete, man, that mental toughness and that mental preparation, I use it today in my everyday life. You know what I mean? We joke about this being meetings at 7:13 and being meetings at 7:12. How you gonna be late for 7:12? It's impossible. Yeah. But he had so much talent on the team that he had to discredit you with any little thing you do. He had to use that against you because that's the only way he can kind of decipher the talent.
Exactly. And I'll expand on that, is that I don't care what you do, that part of the game is the most difficult to prepare for. So you have to have a coach who can kind of pull that out of you and create that in you. I think you look at a lot of the players today, as talented as they are, I don't think they approach the mental aspect of the game the way it should be approached. And that's one thing I can say about Coach Kress is, even as a young player, man, I'm telling you, Jamel, he had me wanting to go back to Virginia after my first month in that program, because it was just so mentally draining. But looking back, I know what he was doing, right? He was building me for not only for that game, but for the game of life, man. It's crazy how that all worked out. But to talk about the talent that was on that team, I mean, had it not been for, and they called themselves the Triple Threat as well, Jamel. Marion, Marcus, and Pat. had it not been for those three dudes, man, I don't know where I would have been in my career, because I think those three guys were catalysts to changing the mentality of that program.
Right.
Because you think about the guys that came behind them, like myself, AJ, and Rodney, and then a year later, Thaddeus Delaney.
Right.
I mean, they kind of helped us understand how the game should be played, you know. And then looking back, when you came in, and then Cedric and that group of guys, it was just kind of like passing down knowledge that we had picked up.
But let me make you laugh with that though. And I tell players about this all the time. Even, you know what I mean, my younger players is like, I did not understand your respect for the game until I got into your level. Until I got to be a junior and I see a freshman coming in, I didn't understand your level of preparation, right? Because, you know, being roommates, we didn't really hit it off, and it wasn't a dislike thing, it was a respect thing. I was young coming in. Yeah. You were like, yo, mofo, like I gotta get, like, I'm like, listen, Stace, I'm at home. I'm like, Mom, he wants to go to bed at 9:30. Like, I can't. Like, what in the world? I'm like, but I didn't understand it. But to you, you're like, bro, look, I'm here for school. I'm here to do this. Like, I'm not trying to be playing around and going out. I understood that, and I respect it now. You know what I mean? I understand it now. Yeah. And to the fact that where Shake and I talk, I did the same thing to Jeff Bolton. God bless him dead. When he came in, I knew this might be a possibility that this could threaten some time for me. So I couldn't let him have it easy. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. And I respect you for that, and I respect the things like y'all did that set that tone for us. It was awesome.
Talking about a rude awakening, right? You're leaving high school, you're the man, putting up numbers, all right? You bully balling, all right? Then you hit college, and it's woof, everything's reset. And Stace talked about his body not being developed when he got into college, and just important from the mental aspect. He talked about the importance of the healthy, strong mind that's needed for the regimen. When you're college coaching, when you get on campus, they're gonna try to break you and see who's the strongest in that group mentally. Yeah, you can look big and pump weights, but if you can't regulate that emotion, coming from a bad game or coming from a bad practice or coming from high school being a man to college not even playing, that's a blow. And if you're not mentally strong, then you're going to fold. And that's what he talked about, the mental aspect of the game. But to his point, the teammates were very, very helpful, right? When you got teammates like that can support you and build you up, that's what's needed. I'll tell a quick story, as you heard earlier. And Stacy and I didn't really get along because of his preparation as a junior. When I came in, it was way beyond my expectations. And his focus was right on point. Matter of fact, after he left, I started implementing some of those practices, preparing for the next games, because you had to get your rest. You had to eat well. You couldn't be out to 2, 3 in the morning. That get up at 6 o'clock for school. Your body's not going to get well that way. It's not going to perform for you. So again, I thank him for sticking to his guns and showing me the way as a freshman on how it's done, because I'm pretty sure he got that tutelage from the older class. But when you're facing adversity, especially in situations, you got to have a strong mind. And touch base on that right quick about mental health. People think mental health is a bad thing, right? So all you need medicine, you got to go see somebody. It ain't that. If you flip it and say healthy mind, it's the same thing. It's just used differently. You need a healthy mind in order to be effective in sports, in life, what have you. So having a healthy mind is very important. And for you student athletes out there, like Stacy said, it's nothing you can prepare for. But if you're expecting it, all right, and you know how to deal with it, it'll be much more better off in the long run.
So Stace,
Yeah,
so
yeah.
like, let's go back. Take it back to where you're a senior and you're graduating. Take us back to the time where the afterlife of college. Where did you play?
Yeah,
How was the life? How was the culture? How was the food? How was it
right.
traveling? How was being away from your family? Like, don't give us the nice stuff because people listening to us, they understand. They need to understand that being a student athlete in college, it ain't easy, right?
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
especially
yeah.
going to the next level of professional ball, it ain't easy. You know how tough it is to go to high school and be relevant, college relevant,
Hmm.
after
Hmm.
college relevant, pro. I mean, and then your future. I mean, your ending career relevancy. How, take us back to that life and what happened, and take us back to that experience.
Yeah, yeah. So I mean, the life of the college career of every basketball player, man, is certainly one that you don't want to end, right? And I was one of those players where I felt like I had more game in me, and kind of explored that. You understand that the way we approached our college career was kind of like a business, right? But
Right.
you got to understand the next level is even more so a business. And you're even more so kind of like an entrepreneur because you may have an agent, but nobody's going to wake you up in the morning. Nobody's going to push you to do those extra workouts.
Wow.
So you're basically managing this on your own and finding the resources to get yourself better. So that's the one thing that I kind of carry with me from, my days with Coach Kress. And so my first job was in Sweden, and man, ecstatic about the opportunity, man. I was just hungry and ready to get out there and do something. And because I knew that, had I performed at that level, maybe that's a catalyst or next step for me to get to the next level.
Right.
I mean, ultimately, everybody wants to play in the NBA,
For sure.
but you got to understand that there's only so many spots, and anywhere you play is a blessing because you and I know that for every one spot, there's like 10 guys out there trying to get that spot. So playing overseas definitely was something that I was looking forward to because I was just looking for a broader experience. And I tell you, man, I couldn't have been more lucky to end up in a situation like Sweden where, I was getting paid on time because as I continued to play, I played with some guys who played on teams who didn't even know when their next paycheck was coming.
Wow.
They were over in a foreign country, not getting paid. That was tough for some people.
Right.
So I was fortunate to be in a situation getting paid. The team took good care of us. Culturally, it was different. But I will say that being in a foreign country, everybody, at least in our generation, speaks English.
I never wanted basketball to end. I wanted to play forever, but it comes a time where it's just going to stop. But what I got from this message is using the college experience and applying it to your everyday life. We talked about being on time. If you're in the workforce, you got to be on time to meetings. If you're in an environment where you're working with your coworkers, you got to know how to deal with your teammates. You're in an adverse situation where your coworker, you guys don't get along. How do you deal with that? Your teammates don't get along. How do you deal with that? So I think the mental part of it again plays crucial into regulating those emotions and using your experience to benefit you. In the college experience, the college experience itself is awesome, but the student athlete college experience, I think, is much more beneficial because you're double dipping. You got two schedules, you got 6 different professors plus 6 different coaches. So it's a lot of personality, energy going across, in your life at this time. And if you can compile all those experiences and use them for your afterlife, I think it'll be beneficial, because that's a precursor to what you're going to see for years from then. Meaning, as you know, as a freshman going into a senior, you got 4 years of college. So those 4 years prepare you, I think, the best of getting ready for the real life situations. So that's what I got out of this episode with Stacy, is that how to use your college experience later on in life. Athletes definitely need to adhere to that. In this timeout message, we got Melvin Watson.
How was it like, as far as, and I spoke to BJ McKie, just about adversity with players, because, Shane and I, we were best friends now, but I didn't want to be friends with him in school because, when the coaches watch that film and, they see me getting this possession, I'm going to get that nod, right?
Right.
And if you're my friend, like, I don't want to hurt you, bro, right? So I had to avoid those relationships because I know what I needed to do. But, now we older and you're in business and you got, relationships, you can't deal with them that way, right?
Right.
How were adverse situations with you? Is, talking to BJ, referring to what he talked about, is that you guys had to talk. You had to sit down and just be men and talk about that. And when you did that, then your progress, it went out of the building. So, at first, but prior to talking about that, what were some of the thoughts on how do you deal with adversity, and what should you give the audience to listening on what not to do?
Oh, man, you have to have. It goes back to what you said. Sometimes you have to be uncomfortable to be comfortable.
Right.
And I think, when I was there after my freshman year, I had a really good freshman year. It was all SEC freshman team. At that time, I was selected to go play in games out out west and playing these games. And BJ was also playing out in those games as well as an All-American coming in. But when when he made his announcement and you're sitting in a dorm and you're watching TV and they break into what you're watching to say, hey, BJ McKie is ready to make his announcement. So you're sitting thinking like, oh, okay. So, I'm just sitting there watching. He said, well, I made my commitment. I decided I was going to stay home and go to the University of South Carolina and pretty much play point. So I'm like, what the hell? Right? So the first thing I did was I went to see Coach White. He's our academic advisor over at the Roost. Make sure you have all your grades and your classes up to par. I had a conversation with him. I said, hey, Coach White, I just saw that Coach Fuller recruited another point guard. I thought I was his guy.
Right.
And he was like, well, you probably just want to, have a conversation with Coach, sit down and see, what he's thinking. But in my mind, I'm like, damn, we don't need another point guard.
Right.
So I went ahead and started preparing to transfer. And I had the paperwork and stuff that I was going to get. And I called my mom, and his mom knows best, man. I talked to her and she was like, why are you trying to leave? And I was like, I tried to explain it to her and she was like, that's dumb, and just hung the phone up.
Right.
And at that time, now I'm mad at my mom because she wasn't listening.
Sure.
But that forced me to have a conversation with Coach Fogler. And Coach Fogler was like, no, you don't need to transfer. Here's the plan. Here's what we're going to do. So when he laid out the plan, I understood what he was saying, but I didn't like it.
For sure.
I'm like, in my mind, like, that's not going to work. This shit ain't going to work. I mean, because he's going to want the ball, and I want the ball. So It's not going to work.
Absolutely.
So,
he's Mr. Basketball. He can put numbers on the board. Why would he not want the ball?
Right, exactly. So when coming in, and that's the fear of not succeeding when competing against somebody, and that's the failure of falling short that makes you start talking and thinking that way, like to run away at that time. And at that time, I thought my stocks was high. Somebody gonna take me. So, but once I sat down and talked to Coach, I was okay. And then when he came, here's where it got. This is where I didn't like him. It wasn't that he came in, but I would have students say, "Hey, man, BJ gonna take your spot." I'm talking about I couldn't go eat without somebody coming up to me and talking to me about BJ. So I got sick of that shit. So I was like, okay, when he come on campus, I'm gonna bust his ass.
Right.
So every time we play pickup, I got BJ. I'm talking about I'm going hard like it's an NC2A championship.
Right.
And he was like, hey, he was like, man, he's strong, and he couldn't get to his spot. Pretty much the same thing I went through my freshman year.
For sure.
But I was so caught up into myself, I didn't, extend the olive branch to help my brother out, who could make us better. I couldn't see that at the time. So at that time, it took a minute, man, because his first year he came in, and BJ got kind of this Kobe Bryant era about him.
Right.
He ain't really arrogant, but he real confident about it.
For sure.
And that makes you look at a person like, man, he arrogant as hell. But if you don't know him,
right,
that's what you're gonna think.
For sure.
And for a year, that's how it was.
For sure.
And we didn't hang out. We was cordial. We was respectful to each other in the locker room. It was nothing major, you know what I mean? But it was still that tension there. And then we went overseas, and that's when it all changed. Coach was like, Coach noticed it. And he was like, hey,
for sure,
y'all two gonna room together.
Right.
And I was like, nah, man, I'm rooming with Ryan. Ryan was my roommate. He's been a roommate for 2 years. This is who I'm rooming with.
Ryan Stats.
Yeah. And he was like, nah, we gonna change it up. Y'all gonna room. So we got in the room. We probably got in the room probably about 10 o'clock, man. And we talked till probably 4:30, 5 o'clock in the morning.
Wow.
We just aired it all out, and sitting down, just talking to him, I got a better understanding of who BJ McKie really is.
Right.
And he's not the guy I thought he was, that I portrayed on him. I didn't know him. I didn't have an opportunity to talk to him like that. But I knew he was a good and smart ball player.
For sure.
But, once we did that, and we just understood that we needed both each other, because to me, I think you can't mention one without the other.
For sure.
I'm talking about all three of us. Because that's how connected we were during that time. When Larry graduated, it was just me and B, and we still did some good things, and we were able to just we were clicked.
But you made a good point. You made a good point that people don't understand the reason why. It's because we fear. We fear of someone taking our spot, coming out some outshining us. We fear those things. So we put those walls up, right?
Right.
We create these different things about the person that we fear that's not necessarily true.
Right.
And if we just start becoming mature and learn how to talk and communicate, we take some of that energy off.
Man, that word adversity, conflict resolution, conflict mediation, so important. And Mel talked about him and BJ having a conflict within the team. And communication is so important. After they communicated, they realized how much they needed each other. They realized how much they were wrong about how they view each other. And it's a common, normal thing to be afraid, right? You're afraid of this guy's come taking your spot. You're afraid of him showing you out. And no matter how hard you work, no matter, you could be 7'9", all right? It's a natural occurrence for those things to happen. But it goes back to regulating that emotion. If you're working hard and you're thinking positive thoughts and you communicate, then you defeat that battle. That's an internal battle. I think being self-accountable, holding yourself accountable. When you put judgment on other people, then you got to expect that's going to happen to you. You don't want nobody judging you and saying something that's incorrect. So you shouldn't internally do it to somebody else. But it's one thing I want to say about Kobe and Meta that they talked about. And Kobe said, you want peace? You got to go to war. So the only way you're going to have peace is going to war. And going to war is talking it out, having those tough conversations, because it's all about personal space, right? Being vulnerable. And that takes a whole lot of courage to be vulnerable and let somebody and explain to somebody, hey, look, I was actually intimidated by your presence. I didn't know how to take you. And you'd be surprised. They say the same thing. Man, I was intimidated by you. I didn't know how to take you. But at the end of the day, it's just all respect. It's all respect. And what that does, that leads to a mental stability. We keep talking about this whole mental thing. It leads to a mental stability that you're not worrying about what's going to happen next, right? You kind of really got ahead of the situation and took care of it. So now every day you're not worrying about what this guy's thinking or what the coach is thinking. Just have a conversation. That's crucial into alleviating all the extra pressures that you are going through as a student athlete, because you can't play that way. You got to be relaxed, you got to be confident, and having those adverse situations can get you uncomfortable if you don't take care of them.
One of the things that we try to do with me coaching my team, I try to have team bond and stuff. Yeah, I mean, you don't have to be the best of friends, but you got to respect each other and you got to play for each other when you're on the court. That's the most important thing.
For sure.
And I think some of these kids, man, they're put in a tough situation because, at practice and during the games, they hear from me a different way, but when they go home, they hear something else. So now there's a conflict between those kids, like, who should I listen to, man? I love my dad, I respect my dad, but
right.
Hey, my coach, man, so that a lot has changed since we came through. A lot has changed, and the guys who are playing now, the one advice I can give them, man, is to be slow to speak, but quick to listen, observe, take it all in, and just analyze the situation and see it for what it is. And I think sometimes, they put too much pressure, and the thing is, if you just go and have fun and work hard, all that other stuff will take care of itself.
Prevention versus treatment approach, right? What Mel did here is, again, use his college experience and applied it to his everyday life. When he was a player, right, him and BJ got into it. After they talked, things were a whole lot better. But the coach created that environment for them to initiate the conversation. And that's what's needed. So what Mel did is take that same approach and create environments for your teammates to talk to each other. It's going to be better for him as a coach. He knows that if his players can play well and get along, it's nothing but success that's going to come from that. So again, you got to get out of your own head. And what he said about having fun, working hard, and having fun, and leave everything on the floor. And lastly, about parents. I tell parents all the time, I only deal with the product you brought to me. All right. If you didn't prepare your kid 4th through 6th grade, 7th, and 8th grade, get ready for high school basketball, it's going to be a problem because they don't understand all the details, the nuances, the game terminologies that needed to carry out plays and executions. So that's very important, parents, of you making sure that your kids are ready to play and they're well equipped at that time. That kind of concludes our student athlete information for today. We want to just bring some different points, drive some different points home that parents, student athletes, coaches, and everybody need to make it to the next level. Those crucial things like the grades that Marcus Woods talked about, that's very important. BJ McKie talked about the triggers. Stacy Harris talked about the mental preparation. And then Melvin Watson talked about adversity, facing adversity. Those things are very important. Thanks for listening. Thanks for engaging. Our last episode of season 2 is called Me versus Me. We're getting into more of the mental health healthy mind, social competence approach that's needed for student athletes right now. All right. We'll be right back.
What Jermel is doing with the DAE Foundation and the approach he's taking to help develop young athletes, first of all, getting them prepared from the academic standpoint, which, as you know as well as I do, Bobby, that's the most important element, to try to get them to eat healthy, to be able to train properly, to get the proper education, and then hopefully for those who are talented enough to have a chance to move on to perhaps even get a free education by going off to college. But I love what Jermel is doing. It's a wonderful program. Hopefully more people in the community will get behind it, and some of the businesses involved as well, to help sponsor this program, because these are the kind of things that every community needs, looking out for the best interest of the youth. The future of this country is in our youth, and everything that we can do to help prepare them better for that is absolutely wonderful. And I can't express adequately enough my admiration and respect for what Jermel is doing, and hopefully he'll get a lot of help from a lot of people.
You can follow us on Facebook and Instagram at Jamel President, and on Twitter at President Jamel. Make sure to subscribe to this podcast, as I'll be bringing you a new interview every month.